studies about entrepreneurship and the work that she said.
Yeah. So to back up a little bit, thanks for having me. This is fun. So I, in college, did not know what I wanted to do, but realized I love school, love learning, and I ended up studying international relations, and I went abroad several times, but also ended up covering the war in El Salvador and Central America in the 80s, which was very intense, and I felt like, okay, I want to continue to learn about the world. This way, I became a journalist. I went to the Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism, which if anyone's considering going into journalism, or even not necessarily journalism, but communications, so recommend everybody take, there's a class called J200. I feel like everybody should take that class because you essentially learn to synthesize information and communicate it clearly. But I digress. So I ended up becoming a journalist, and I worked in documentary film for a long time, but for the last 12 years have worked as a freelance magazine writer. So as someone who has pursued my passion rather than making a lot of money, I'm very interested in other people who pursue their passion. And I'm especially intrigued as someone who has done fine, but I will say flat out, has not made a ton of money. I am interested in people who pursue their passion and make a lot of money as a byproduct of pursuing their passion. And I think I'm just gonna be blunt and say, in this day and age, I think we have it a little ass backwards. I'm sure all of you are very thoughtful, and I know, you know, the Haas Business School is a business school that keeps a balance of pursuit of money, because of course we all need to make a living, and especially if you're going to stay here in the Bay Area. But how amazing if you can make a living and not sell your soul or not just get by. And that's a hard thing to do, but I, as a writer, get to profile these people again and again and again. So the people I'm going to introduce you to, 4 of them are people I've written about. One of them is my daughter. I've not written about my daughter, but I'm going to include her for reasons that you'll see at the end of this. But the people that I'm going to talk to you about today are people that I've profiled in the last, probably all in the last year, I'd say. And they are all interesting in different ways, and as I thought about these people, I thought about the common themes, the common characteristics that all of them have, and so they each reveal in different ways these characteristics that I believe people who have it all have. I think it's hard to have it all, and these guys, because of this set of characteristics, you tell me what you think, but and we can talk about it. But having done over a decade of interviewing all kinds of people, I think there's a kind of weather system, a kind of magic that happens when you're brave enough to follow your passion. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so starting, who will we start with? Carol. Okay, have any of you gone to Rustic Bakery? If you're from Marin County, you know it, okay? It's very popular. It's kind of become, she now has 4 shops. Carol Lavalle is probably the most confident person I know. So that's gonna be our first characteristic. And how do I, you know, I'm not gonna say, okay, here's how you become as confident as Carol Lavalle, but all I can say is that across the board, every single entrepreneur I know who's been successful has somehow found incredible confidence. I suspect it came pretty easily to Carol, but she was someone who, she had an art background and she liked to bake. So this is just taken from an article I wrote about her. I've written about her a couple times over the last few years. And so I'll just read a little bit. The idea was simple. They would make and sell organic artisan crackers. Little did they know that their exponential success, rustic bakery crackers, crisps, and cookies are now found in markets across the US, Canada, Japan, and the Middle East, Virgin Airlines, other major contracts, would lead to 4 local bakery cafes that have become casual dining landmarks. Okay, so the idea for her was, I like to bake, I've been in the design industry. She was manufacturing like women's leggings or something and doing fine, doing well, but not enjoying herself. She loved to bake. Every day she'd come home late from work and she would bake. So I don't know if anyone's heard of Cowgirl Creamery. They're also very successful entrepreneurs, again, because they do what they love. They're cheesemakers. But she decided to go into the Cowgirl Creamery shop and taste their cheese and look at the crackers that they had available with the cheese. And right then and there, she went up to the 2 women who were, you know, renowned in the cheese world and renowned in the foodie world out in West Marin. And she actually, this was at the one at the Ferry Building in San Francisco, and she told them, I could do much better. I could make much better crackers than anything you have here. And they said, okay, well, let's see what you got. So the next week she sent them a sample of her crackers, and that evening they ordered 500 orders, which was basically like each order was 3 packages. She didn't have a kitchen. She didn't have manufacturing. She didn't have any packaging. She didn't have a design. She didn't have anything. But she goes, I'll get it to you in a month. And that was the beginning. And she says, for better or for worse, I have a tremendous amount of self-confidence, and I always feel like I can figure it out one way or another. In the face of adversity, I respond well and figure out solutions. For me, it's important to see the entire path ahead of me. If it isn't entirely clear what the right move is, I wait. I wait until I really feel certain, and that approach has never let me down. Very often it's a eureka moment, and then everything falls into place. So the thing with Carol is that she knows that she will see that path. And I think the patience to know that somehow you'll figure it out, not just you have to have an answer here, you know what direction you're going. If as an entrepreneur, that confidence in yourself that you will figure out what the best way is, you may not know right off the bat, but that you're going to figure it out. It's patience and it's confidence. So she basically, I don't know what else I wrote here. Okay, the other thing, these are a few other qualities that she has. She's badass. She's a tall woman. She owns the room. Now here's the thing, is that she's not afraid to be harsh with people if they're failing her. So it's that real balance, right? Like of being, and I've watched so many of these incredibly successful bosses, entrepreneurs, who have that real balance. It's sweet and sour, right? You're like a good coach. If anyone's on a sports team, like a good coach is going to have very, very, very high standards for you and be really pissed if you fail them, but they will also have your back 100% and be your biggest fans and believers. And that's what she has. So she's not irrational, she just has incredibly high expectations. Here's another quality. So we've talked about confidence, and we're gonna, risk-taking is one of the 7 that I'm talking about today. Every single entrepreneur that I have interviewed who's successful is willing to take an intelligent risk. But it's a well thought out, it's a patient state of mind, but it's willing to take a risk. So she asked when she knew she wanted to do this, when Cowgirl Creamery placed that first order, she called up every single friend and relative who had even a little bit of money, $1,000, $10,000. She cobbled together what she needed. So she cobbled together $250,000 out of calling everybody she knew, and friends of friends included. That's tough. You know, she had to believe that this was going to work. So she did that, and Passion. What she said that she would say when I actually asked her this when I interviewed her, what would you say to a young entrepreneur who's trying to start out the way you are? She said, I would say, just make sure that you like what you're doing, because you're gonna do so much of it. Like, you're gonna sleep very little and you're gonna do so much of that. And in her case, it was baking in combination with figuring out where to manufacture, finding, you know, the real estate for cafes, all of this. It was everything, but it was, she had a understanding of manufacturing, so that skill base under there, you're gonna have to jump in and research it if you don't, right? But she seems like the kind of person who will. She'll just go talk to people and ask them about manufacturing, the details of manufacturing. Because once you know manufacturing, right, she had it through this apparel industry, but once you know manufacturing, you can jump over to any industry, right, to some degree, with some changes. But and then again, she's a badass, but she does invest in her employees, so they feel cared for, they feel part of a community. I didn't put this up there, but there was real issues with an ICE audit, and she gave all of her employees who had any discrepancies in their documents, any problems with working, she gave them this amazing severance until they could come back. She gives them health care. She gives them, you know, benefits, basically. She's making her employees, many of whom are basically, you know, wage laborers, feel very respected. And so you have sometimes multiple generations working in her different stores. There's a real loyalty. So that's that kind of front end investment that I highly admire and recommend. Okay, so this was a fun one. I did a lot of sampling on this story. I spent like a day up in Sebastopol with these guys. So he is from England. Have you guys heard of sloe berries? Sloe gin? Okay, it's a certain kind of berry that only grows in certain spots. It grows in southern England, where he's from, and there are these, you know, ancient recipes for sloe gin using these berries. He had that. His wife, Ashby, she was a chef. She had a palate, she had a nose. And so they, again, the brave part, they're up in Sebastopol. They decided that nobody else, they looked at the market and they decided nobody else is selling sloe gin at this boutique-y level, right? And they figured out, they actually didn't end up importing the sloe berries from England. They imported them from Bulgaria. But they looked for that spot in the market and they decided to go for it. Again, a lot of loans. All of these people are willing to take, whether it's through friends and family, through banks, they're willing to put everything on the line. Scary as heck, but so they returned from spending, I think, a year in England and kind of studying the family techniques to come and become the only domestic, truly the only domestic U.S. producer of sloe gin. They hired, it's funny, if I go back, you'll see, just happened that Timo ended up being the only guy, and they said that everybody that they hired, it just ended up that all these women were the best people for the job. And a lot of them were from the food industry. Like one woman who is one of the distillers, she had worked in the chocolate industry where it's in you taste it, you do these chocolate pairings, and gin and chocolate happen to go very well together, so it was kind of a natural transition for her. But what I noticed with this company is that literally you could ask the marketer to go and check on something in the distilling room and she would know what to do. So everybody bought in the way a good startup does. And again, what a fun industry. Like, you're doing all kinds of food pairings, you're trying, and they started, after they had success with this slow gin, they started growing the business and trying other spirits. And I've never seen such a hardworking, having fun group. Like even just the location, you can see it's so beautiful, and then their tasting room is gorgeous, and anyway, good tasting up in at the Barlow in Sebastopol if you ever want to go up there. So, as this was Ashby saying, everyone here shares the ability to jump into the deep end and do whatever is needed to be done. We wanted to do everything right, Timo explains, right down to deciding to adhere our labels by hand because we wanted a very specific shape for a bottle. Again, they were trying to also tap in, like the spirits market traditionally was more oriented toward males. So they're looking at slow gin, but they're also looking at the bottle shape, trying to market to women. So that kind of creative, open-minded look at where they can fit into the market. We wanted a very specific shape for our bottle, a flask shape that's just a little smaller and better for our female distillers' hands to hold. This labor-intensive production, never taking the easy route, may have seemed counterintuitive at first, perhaps not the most direct approach to profitability, but in fact, as consumers have become increasingly aware and choosy, the fine-tuned, handcrafted approach matters. So again, it's part of the story. And here's where like I totally fell in love with these guys. So creativity is definitely a strong suit. Again, all the entrepreneurs in some way or another have an incredibly open-mindedness goes with creativity. They have this creative element. The beauty of craft distilling is that while the process is informed by eons of tradition and the empirical results of predecessors' work, the business has the flexibility to try new things. That's Timo or Ashby, I can't remember which. This is them. So there are a lot of reasons why liquid will go through the wood of a barrel. Vibration is one. So this is the way we vibrate the liquid. Each employee chooses a playlist for a given barrel. Timo's is the Bluegrass Hybrid Band, The Devil Makes Three. Ashby goes highbrow with the Nutcracker by the SF Philharmonic. Lauren has her barrel, taking in the more exotic Santa Gold, and other barrels are rocking to Led Zeppelin and the soundtrack from Tron. We take it pretty seriously because the barrel has to listen to the same music for 20 months. We'll see how they turn out. I mean, yeah, it's gimmick, but it's also real, and they're having fun with it. And it's part of why people love coming to their tasting room. They want to try a whiskey that has been listening to Led Zeppelin. I mean, who wouldn't, you know? Like, how does this taste? And it does, there's a science behind it. So, again, like, they're kind of firing on all cylinders, all barrels, I should say. So yeah, creativity is another one. Okay, I'm literally just writing this story now. This woman, Jeannie Jarno, essentially thinks like sustainable Sephora. There are a couple of them out there, but she is just taking off. So watch for the name Beauty Heroes. Sustainable and non-toxic Sephora. Jeannie was, I don't know what her education background is. She's just kind of one of those street smart people, and she was the director of the most successful spa in Napa, like the highest end spa you can find. And for 10 years she was there, and she realized that they were lying. Again and again and again, their clients who are paying whatever $500 for a facial, whatever it is, are being told that it's non-toxic and ocean friendly, and she would be looking at the details because she's a perfectionist, she's a detail person, and she'd be looking at the details and she'd be like, well, wait a minute, this ingredients we don't know. We actually don't know about that. And also your packaging, that supposedly recyclable plastic, that's not recyclable, that's a lie. And here she is, you know, trying to market this incredibly high-end spa to incredibly high-end clientele and not okay with it. So what did she do? She basically took her life savings and decided she was smart. she realized, okay, if I'm gonna do this, first of all, she thought, what do I have? Well, I have 10 years of relationships with people in the industry. I know the people who are actually doing what they say they're doing. I know the people who are actually using only pure ingredients and are actually have a sustainable model. So she took that, because that's what she had, and she had a little bit of, she and her husband had some money. Not a ton, but they had some, and she said, I know I can't do a brick and mortar. I don't have enough money to do that right now. Certainly not a franchise brick and mortar. But what I can do is I can do a combo e-commerce, and then I have this idea, this new idea. You always need something new, right? So you have to be creative. She said, my new idea is what she says here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see, no, it's not there. It's use less, love more. So basically, any female in this class is gonna know that we end up having like 10 bottles of like half-used, overpriced stuff. She's like, I'm gonna be an incredible curator, so everything, I'm gonna be that person that everybody can believe in and know that if I say this is non-toxic, like 100% non-toxic, and I say this works, and I say they have a sustainable packaging and sustainable plan, and they have, there's this 1% club where not only are you sustainable, but you're actually, every time you do a sale, you're planting a tree. Like they are truly offsetting their carbon footprint. She goes, I'm gonna be that person. So she was a three-prong approach. So what she did was she did 2 years, zero profitability, which had to be so scary, right? Because they have kids and they're young and a young family. And she did the e-commerce, and she created a subscription service. So that e-commerce with subscription, the two of those things after 2 years started to become profitable. And then she was like, okay, here we go, flagship store. So this is her first store, she just opened it, but she's doing well enough that she can do that, and the e-commerce subscription combo are taking off. And so, let's see, what else? Yeah, it's that multi-layered effect. That was so key. And like I said, she was a major risk taker. They invested their life savings in the company, took 2 years before they stopped bleeding money, and 5 years before they became profitable. So they just became, they just opened after 5 years this flagship shop. The other thing about Jeannie is she will go on any TV show, any radio show. She puts herself out there. And I talk about this later, but somewhere on your team you have to have that people person. It's not just sales. It's like genuinely love people. Genuinely love being out there talking to anybody and everybody. And it might be you, that's great. If it's not you, you have to find that person who feels as excited about it as you do and is willing to be out there. So, okay, so these guys are interesting. They had a whole different approach. Tamara, is a psychologist, pretty well-known psychologist in San Francisco. He's the head of, he's a thoracic surgeon, okay? Neither of them loved their jobs. Of course, they're very successful. They both made a fair amount of money and were saving money in San Francisco because they're very educated and very good at what they do. But 20 years ago, they were like, this is not what we want to do for the long run. This is not all we want to do. And they went out and they bought an old, completely decrepit farm out in West Marin. Like, you don't even know. It was a meth factory. So all the, and they still joke, they say that their products, like why people come back for more is because there's traces of meth from the ground. So Tuluma Farms, Tamales Bay Farm Creamery, and Daily Driver in the city. So it was so bad. They were, talk about crazy, like they also, I mean, they're well-to-do, and what they decided is that they would keep working their day jobs. He would keep doing surgery at UCSF. She would keep seeing clients in the city, and they would drive back and forth and try to learn, one, how to regenerate this land and this farm, and two, how to farm. Like, they knew nothing. They had no idea. So they just started making friends with anybody and everybody who was out there doing it and learning. And they were using all the money that they were making with their, so this is a completely radical, like, you have to be so energetic to do this. I'm sure that some of you in this room are, but like, this is 20 some years in, and I look at them and I'm like, it blows my mind, like, what your day is like every single day. Imagine, like, being the head, not just a thoracic surgeon, but the head of thoracic surgery at UCSF. And then you go and deal with all of the issues. Like, farming is hard. Anyone who has grown up on a farm or been around a farm, it's just nonstop hard. It's only problems, like, every day. It's problem. And so for 20 years, they did this back and forth life. But a lot of what they did is to pick out people. Again, I was talking about finding your people. They are people, but they found the people that would essentially be their proxies when they weren't there. So according to Hicks and Jablons, it's the people, their extended farm family, that matters most when they reflect on the past decade and a half of hard work it's taken to get the farm and creamery business to where it is today. Fast forward, they just opened so they've had several young couples, young people who become couples, young friends. They all branch off, start their own businesses, or like in the case of Daily Driver, they co-invest. They open up this restaurant cafe in Potrero at Dog Patch in the city. So all these offshoot businesses now coming out of this. It's worth noting that in the case of this husband-wife duo, the phrase hard work does not do justice to their efforts. Without previous farming experience and while holding on to their day jobs to help fund Tuluma Farms, blah, blah, blah. They took a decrepit former dairy, the buildings and barns falling down, soil abused and neglected, and brought it back to life. They are very creative. So they have so many people from the city. All of Facebook, like half of the Facebook employees from Menlo Park just came out and did goat yoga and cheese tasting, and they will do whatever it takes to keep people coming to their farm. They're this new model, and so they're very creative. They've learned animal husbandry, herd management. They have all these sheep. So they've learned farming, cheese making, also value-added product marketing, which is a huge way to go. All of these people are value-added entrepreneurs. So, and distribution, secured organic certification for their land, as well as animal welfare and certified humane certification for their herds, wrote USDA grants, designed and built a gorgeous 12-bed farmhouse. They host educational farm tours for paying guests and also for school children, as well as farm dinners, cheese making and soil science seminars, and other unique events such as goat yoga. And they get, they just have a constant, it's like a retreat, it's a farm, their cheeses are doing really well, their new restaurants are doing well, so they did it. Okay, here's my last one. This is my daughter. And the reason I included her is because she is the only person that I know up close and have watched behind the scenes. She's a Stanford student, and I can tell you that she has taken, other than her tuition, like literally the baseline tuition, she pays for everything in her life through this business. Now, she has a background in arts. She actually went to school with Larkin when she was young, and they all had to learn to paint and draw and all of that, but she just took to it. So she started this company, and she said, it's going to be stickers. Some of you may have even seen them. I have not on this one, but like sometimes someone in Maryland just texted me that they were at a cafe and the barista had a Made by Jen sticker. She was like, do you know Jensen? And they're like, no. So anyway, she decided she was going to do stickers, and I was like, oh, great, you know. But, like, really? She just, so the reason I am using Jensen as an example is because she is a pure social media and Etsy business. She uses social media like nobody's business. And so she sends freebies to influencers, to musicians, and they share. She has like Hydro Flask, right? I can't even see how many people. This was long ago, but Hydro Flask, you know, she sent them a picture with some of her stickers. This is a musician, Ash, I don't know her, but this was, My Heart is in California was a fundraising sticker that was after the wildfires, and she raised in a week or two $5,000 for wildfire relief. And what that did was it drew attention. I mean, of course it mattered to her so much. We knew people who lost their homes, families. We didn't know anyone who was killed, but we saw it up close, so it mattered to her. But it also drew the attention of like the Marin County Mart and Proof Lab Surf Shop and these kind of iconic shopping centers. There's different stores, the Toby's Feed Barn out in Point Reyes that started, she got exposure, and they started to ask her to design specialty stickers, design posters. My two qualities for Jensen, open-minded. So let's go back. These stickers, these rainbow star stickers, I was like, what's that about? She goes, middle school girls. Again, Instagram, middle school girls. She goes, you don't know how many middle school girls want stars and rainbows across the world. Like, I get so many orders for stars and rainbows. She's like, I'll make stars and rainbows. You know, she can make very like sort of advanced drawings but she's like, I'll just do whatever. She's very fluid and responsive. I love social media marketing because you get immediate feedback. People either like your product or they don't, and if they don't, you change what you're doing. So she'll put something up, and if it doesn't sell, she takes it down and tries something else. She focused on like boulder stickers, you know, like universities. She had one for Berkeley briefly, but she's kind of, her sister went to Berkeley. I went to Berkeley, but I also went to Stanford. So she's a little mixed about her Berkeley sticker. So she didn't really promote that too much. What she did do, the determined part here, the reason I talk about that is, and again, like every single case study here, these are determined people. Like the confidence and determination factor, it's just, you know, it's so easy to be like, oh, maybe that won't work. And these people are weird. They have something wrong in their brain where they're like, oh, no, it's still gonna work. And I'm like, in her case, you know, Stanford the Copyright Office never lets anybody use Hoover Tower or do any new Stanford designs. She just kept going back to them for a year. She just kept going back to them until they acquiesced. And so now her stickers and little posters, and I think they even do t-shirts, are sold in the Stanford stores. It took so long, and she was just like, no, I'll just keep trying, you know. She just kept working on it, and finally they acquiesced, and she got copyright permission. And then once they give you copyright permission, they're much more likely to let you do other things. And also she's like, oh, you want posters? Sure, I'll do posters. You want a hat? You want whatever it is, you want rainbows and stars, I'll do that, you know. So so I thought she was a good person to include just because I've seen it up close, and I know that I'm not sending her a lot of money spending. I'm not sending her any spending money or books money or any of that. So it's working, whatever she's doing, you know, as a side gig that she enjoys. So again, just to kind of go back, these are the after years and years and years of seeing people up close. I actually have my own side business. I help, 10 years ago I started a small business. I help students with their college essays, with the whole I don't do the whole process, but I help them figure out what to write about. So I'm an essay consultant. And that I would talk about, except that, like, a couple reasons I don't think it really applies. It's a fun side business, and I think this is sort of how I would describe a side business, is you find a niche that you know people need, and you use a skill that you already have, and then you don't depend on it as your main source of income. And all of those make for great side business, which my little business has been, but it's why I don't have to have I haven't had to have any of these things to run my business, because it's just been so easy. It's just been kind of fit in, like in the evenings and weekends kind of thing, of something I love to do, work with young people. So the people that I shared with you today, confidence, passion, determined, so open-minded, so willing to change directions as needed. Like, I'll go back to the first one, Carol Lavallee, with Rustic and all of the Rustic baked goods. She did not want a cafe, but the only way she could get the industrial kitchen was the landlord said, this is zoned that it has to be a cafe also. So she was like, what the hell, I'll open a cafe. Now her cafes, there's lines out the doors. So she did both. She was like, okay, if it has to do that, I'll do it. I'll just work harder. Risk takers, but intelligent risk takers. Exceptional people skills, again, somewhere in the group. And the last one is just such a work ethic. Like, I know everybody's at Berkeley, so all you guys have a work ethic. You don't stay here unless you have pretty decent work ethic, or maybe you're just off the charts genius. But it's hard. It's hard to be here without a pretty good, darn good work ethic. So yeah. So those are the things. But I'm talking about a work ethic of, like, very next level work ethic, like finals time where you're not sleeping, but all the time, like year round for several years. That's the kind of thing that I've seen in these guys, getting their businesses off the ground. And then it kind of changes. Like, once they get up and running, especially once they start to have, enough money to make real hires, then they've got, management is taken care of, and they can just breathe and get back to kind of thinking about different directions and expanding the business. But just especially in those first 5 years, just being prepared to work so hard because you believe in what you're doing. So that's it. That's my and yeah, I don't know if anyone has any does anyone come from a family, an entrepreneurial family, or a business? What is your family business?
My dad started in engineering firm,
Wow. Was it successful from the start, or was it?
That's it was really hard, and he went through a lot of trouble. But
Yeah. How many years?
I think 30 years now.
But how long before he started to thrive?
Probably 15.
Wow.
10 or 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he was determined.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, one thing I'll say is that, all these things that we get used to, like vacations, like downtime and vacations, and just, it feels like I'm trying to scare you away from being entrepreneurs. Honestly, so one reason I like to talk about these guys is it's hard to find happy, really hardworking people in the world. People who just love what they're doing. It's not that easy to find, and I get to be around them all the time. People who just truly, genuinely love it, because they own it from start to finish. They're not just punching the time clock. And So that's the payoff. It's yours, you know, it's yours, and you're doing something that you believed in from the start, and yeah. Are you interested in that?
In engineering, no.
Oh.
Maybe starting my own business.
Yeah.
eventually,
Yeah. Wow. And were you little when the business was, or was it already kind of starting to take off a little bit?
He like never would tell us anything about it, so I actually only have known about it for like a few years.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew that it existed, but I didn't know the details.
Yeah.
He kept it like really, he was really cutty, like really low key about it. I don't really know why.
Right. So you didn't want to share
The troubles.
the troubles,
or
yeah.
the triumphs either. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else have a, yeah?
So out of all those like traits you listed at the very end,
Yeah.
which one would you say has probably been like the most important one? I know it's kind of a hard question to pick.
It's not that hard, actually, work ethic. Yeah. I hate to say that, but like literally these people, there's not one of them who hasn't worked their butt off. I mean, you do need them all, but I think work ethic is like the foundation, you know? And then, you know, I mean, I don't know, I almost think, like, it helps if you have, like, in the case of my daughter, she's artistic, right? She's got this art skill, or Carol Lavalley, she could bake and really well. She had a passion, so that helps. But I don't think you necessarily, if you find, like, Timo and Ashby, I don't think they really meant to be distillers. You know, it wasn't like, oh, we're just so good at this and we've developed this skill. They kind of went for it because they saw this niche, and then Ashby did end up having a real palate and ability, but I would say probably work ethic. I also have to say, like, I think, as I've said several times today, like, I think the people thing, you know, just being willing to, like, kind of be out there with, and it, like, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, so yes, sometimes it means, like, actually be out there. Like, I know a lot of craft producers, artisans, who are actually in the grocery stores, like, day after day, like politicians, like, selling their platforms, selling their goods, and that helps. But it also means, like, you know, I don't know, in the case of Jensen, like, she's like, what do little girls want? You know, being able to kind of look into what other people are like and what they're, and not have your ego involved where you wouldn't do that. You know, like really reading the market kind of people person. Yeah. Anyone else have any? Yeah.
How did you like get started with freelance journalism? Like, how did you get connected to all these things?
Okay, so that's good. A good question in case anybody wants to be a freelancer. So I've essentially been able to not be part of. I've been part of a lot of different businesses because, like, when I was in documentary film, I would jump from film production company to film production company. We were making all films for public television, but I would only stay with a company for a number of years, depending on the film we were making. So I was already a freelancer there. And again, it's a little bit like just being in school, and that's why I wanted to do it. I could jump into new realms and become an expert on that realm, by virtue of telling a story about it. And so after journalism school, again, like, I wish J200, if you guys, while you're here, I don't know if you can take J200, it might be only journalism students who can, but it's such a hardcore class and it gets you really good at writing quickly. You just get over it. You get over any head trips you have about writing. You just take the information and you process it, so I did that, and then I decided to go into documentary film, and then because I wanted to be home more and not traveling around the world as much when I had kids, I started just pitching stories. And I live in Marin, where you guys are from, some of you in this room. And so I looked around and thought, well, what happens here in Marin? In Marin, a lot of things happen, but the stories that I could write, the things I could write about most and stay at home: food, farming, the environment, There are a lot of things I write about the arts. I write about mental health a lot. But, so I just started pitching stories to local editors, and stories that I knew would be good stories. But I didn't really have much of a print background at that time, so it was slow. But, you know, you write 2 good stories and then you've got clips to show editors, and they're like, yeah, and people start reaching out to you. I almost never pitch anymore. I just have a constant stream of editors reaching out to me, asking me to do stories, and my beat has become food, farming, wine, artisan producers, you know, so I write about all these things that kind of are robust right now, and so there's a lot of work in that realm. And, you know, I would say that journalism is like the best career. It is so fun. And especially in this day and age, the best journalists I know have a hard time, like, you can't live in the Bay Area, really. It's kind of like, I love it. I would not trade it. And my husband he's the primary breadwinner, so between us, we can live in the Bay Area. But in all honesty, you got to figure out how to get by on not a lot of money. There are a few people like television anchors, you know, but it's hard. Certain sports reporters, sports writers, entertainment writers. You can edit, you can be an editor and make a really robust, a decent living, but when I was younger, you could live in the Bay Area as a journalist, and it's just, I'm just being honest now, it's just hard to, if you're gonna be the primary breadwinner in your family. I think it is, I mean, it sounds like maybe I'm encouraging you not to go into that realm. That would be like encouraging you not to be a teacher, you know, 100%. If you have an inkling to do it, I would not trade my career and my job for anything. It is so interesting. I travel, I work at home, you know, I mean, it's just incredibly interesting, and I feel like I shine a light on the people in society who deserve to have a light shined on them, whether it's because they're doing incredible service work, or they are, you know, just the small business owners, like these guys who are doing everything right, like the sustainable farmers. It's all the people who are worthy I get to write about, or filmmakers, films that are worthy, or artists who are worthy. I get to write about suicide prevention, and I mean all these things that matter so much to society. So I have so much meaning. I just don't make a lot of money. I make enough. So that's the honest answer. But I recommend following your passion. Thank you.
Hey Liz, I want to hear